welcome to this week's Oxford University Air Squadron News in Brief. This week we'll be talking about tennis and, amongst other sports, how it's moving onto a virtual platform. Amongst other things, we'll be also looking at Africa, looking into last week's account of how locusts have swarmed most of sub-Saharan East Africa and how it will affect the rest of the continent. In other news, Australia, bushfires in 2019 raging on. We'll be looking at how it's affected the world as a whole environmentally and specifically the country and what it aims to do to fight the crisis. Furthermore, we'll be looking at other accounts such as mass migration and what's been happening on the continent of India. But first of all, coming here live from the Oxford University Air Squadron News and Brief room, it's Piers Ledger with the weather. Piers, how's the weather looking for the week?
Thank you, Lesh. As you can tell, I am the weatherman, and it's 100% drip. Back to you.
Bringing you back into the studio. Thank you, Piers, very much for the weather. Our first story tonight will be virtual sport and how the NFL and its 32 clubs have made its first ever virtual NFL draft this week. Our question is, will other sports follow? And will all of the sports survive? With this, tennis has also followed the NFL in that it's taking its sport online. Tennis players Rafael Nadal and Andy Murray of the United Kingdom have actually gone and said that they will play a virtual game against each other using an online gaming platform, which it will use to play its first online game. This is ahead of the Madrid Open, which was set to start in 2 weeks' time. However, due to the cancellation due to coronavirus, the two will play each other online. This is the first version that we've seen from the sport to be played online, and all proceeds from the winnings from the Madrid Open are to go towards players who play the sport who have been struggling due to the lockdown and COVID-19. Now we talk about Africa. Last week we covered how majority of Eastern Africa had been plagued with a locust infestation, the worst in the region in the last 25 years. Eastern Africa has now been hit by COVID-19, with 27,000 confirmed cases across the region, and issues such as water security adding to that issue. Clean water and sanitation is also a big area of concern for local governments in this area that have been affected by the plague. Amongst trying to tackle COVID-19 and trying to allow social distancing and sanitization of the area to go on, tackling locusts on top of this has also proved difficult. As if COVID-19 and a plague of locusts weren't enough, Africa as a whole has faced a large downturn in economic turnover through its exports and its imports. This has been with trade dropping within the first quarter of the year. With 34% of the sub-Saharan economy being part of an informal sector, how will the rest of Africa really cope with the virus amongst fighting it? This plague of locusts will mean that a reduced harvest for people will be seen across Eastern Africa. This could lead to famine. Because people cannot export or import goods in the region or even internationally, it will lead to a downturn in the amount of money people can make for their families. This could lead to many different things. Amidst the COVID-19 situation, sanitation and access to clean water is very important. With social distancing measures being placed amongst lots of different countries across Eastern Africa, questions are being asked as to the region's security and whether it's vulnerable to any different crises internally. Earlier on this week, we saw in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, a police officer shot a civilian who was protesting his right to stay out and not have lockdown, with public health being questioned as to its ability to cope with the virus. In turn, how will Africa cope? What does this mean for us in the UAS? And further looking forward into our military careers, as a UAS, why do we need to look at such crises such as, locusts in Africa? It may seem very far away, but this could actually lead to mass movement of people, like we've seen much with the Syrian conflict into Turkey, parts of Greece and majority of parts of Europe. This could happen in East Africa. Large groups of people could move about and mass movement could actually cause lots of different issues. On top of this, with the economic downfall, people might get desperate. Civil wars might break out. Tribal wars even could break out. This brings us on to our next piece of news. Now, Australia, a nation already scarred from the 2019 bushfires that we saw ravage the nation over Christmas, hit hard by its hot weather and early extreme bushfires, has now been slowing the rates of infection on its fight on COVID-19. From bushfires straight into COVID-19, large parts of Australia are seeing reduced rates of the virus spreading, with parts of WA reporting 0 to 1 to few patients catching the virus per day. This is probably down to the large part of its isolation. I asked this question though, can COVID-19 help to actually cure the environmental issues of the country? A big part of the bushfires in Australia is actually down to how the government and Australia as a whole prepares for its hot season over the British Christmas. A lot of the time it's very controversial because the Australian government use a method called burning back. This is basically where fire departments will use controlled burns to burn off areas of high risk around cities and areas of large populations. It's been said it doesn't help too much, however, by burning back large parts of the bush, it stops the risk of bushfires coming through a region, burning close to settlements. So, in light of this, burning back the bush might be the way forward for a brighter future of 2020. Not to mention what the Australians already use to fight fires, which is actually the aerial assets of aircraft. The Australians have 160 different aircraft across the region to help fight these fires aerially. The nation's role of firefighting from the air is huge. Let us know in the comments on the Facebook page whether you think aviation has a role in fighting the environment, not just in Australia but across the globe. Scientists use advanced data sets to model where bushfires might affect the population most. They also talk about the use of drones in the future to try and help reduce the risk of loss of life. Does this mean that we could look at drones actually being autonomous and helping this fight against bushfires and the environment in general? Is there a space for technology to fill that gap? Let's start a discussion about that on the Facebook. Going on from this, aviation plays a huge role within the country. However, the Australian government also have been looking at how to tackle COVID-19 amongst their growing environmental issues. This is through various different strategies, however the latest one being launched. The government has also launched an app which can trace its population down to who has COVID-19 and who doesn't. Individuals are alerted via Bluetooth a range of other individuals who might be infected with COVID-19 via the app. They could also check in and out of whether they are isolating at home and their conditions. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said it's not his preferred option. However, he promises that this is the steps to get the nation running again. The problems with the app would be that half the nation would need to actually use the app for it to actually become effective. Issues also with security and privacy are also at stake. The app only keeps data on your phone for 21 days and will only upload to a government server run by Amazon if you actually test positive for the virus. My question to you is, if this app came to the UK, would you use the app? Would you be against it? And would you feel that your privacy is being invaded? That covers Australia, and next we move to our scope of actually mass movement. This week, since COVID-19, India has imposed its lockdown. Since lockdown, the majority of its people have actually ended up moving back to their home villages across the regions. This has meant masses and masses of mass movement across the region as people have travelled back to their home villages. It's the largest mass movement recorded ever since the 1947 partition of India. History is in the making amidst COVID-19. This type of mass movement is huge. As discussed in Africa, this could lead to lots of different crises and civil wars or tensions amongst different tribes and different peoples and different regions arise. As a military, this is a big problem. Why? Because we tackle situations like this across the globe, and it tends to be military is the way that governments respond to such crises, to police people. And do you think it's right to be policing people in such a time of COVID-19, especially when there's areas in the world such as India that have such high populations? How do you control spread of COVID-19 amongst the people who are so interknit? So mass movement is a big part of what's happening at the moment across Africa and across India. My question is, with mass movement happening, will it actually control the spread of COVID-19? Or will it just lead to increased tensions across different people as lockdown happens and economic downturn affects lots of different lives? How will we feed people with no one working? And how will people get their money to feed their families and keep the economy going? I'm APO Lethbridge, and this is your news in brief for the week.